Hey guys, welcome to review 114. Today I will be reviewing Bali Behind the Mask by Anna Daniel. Okay, and as you can see sort of by the shape and size of the book, this is a kind of combination coffee table slash narrative book. Just to show some pictures off. It's kind of weird they did some of them in black and white and some of them, there's a good picture, and some of them in color. Anna did. But what this book is about is it's set in Indonesia, specifically and exclusively in Bali, Indonesia. And it follows Anna Daniel as she goes to Bali sort of before the commercialization of Bali. To kind of focus on some of the traditional dances there. Now, if you know nothing about Bali, it is the one island or area of Indonesia that remained Hindu, primarily Hindu, post, the Islamic wave that happened. That's really not key to this book. But the reason that I bring it up is because of that history. Bali has developed its own culture of dance and meaning and very sort of a vibrant oral history, as well as performance theatrical history involving very symbolic masks and kind of it's a way to instill knowledge from one generation to the next, while at the same time having to keep up with modern trends as well as entertaining audiences. We think that modern trends or outside influences or whatever it may be really are only something that happened within the last 30 or 40 years. But these Bali dancers have to continually incorporate things into their dancing. Primarily what the dances involve, as I said, it's normally a storyline. They're normally involved around a Bali temple. Let's see if I can get some good pictures here. Let's see. Yeah, so you got some good pictures right in there. Normally they have sort of a little lesser. That's like a redo of the cover right there. They have a little lesser kind of lowbrow entertainment to start the parade or the show. These shows are definitely meant for wide consumption on the island. It's not just specifically among the island's elite or island's elders, if you will. And they have sort of like a very farcical kind of very physical humor type of trope that starts. Normally it involves a pompous kind of mid-level bureaucrat, as well as is classical in a lot of areas, the fool. So the fool kind of makes fun of the pompous, minister, while at the same time there's recognition that the fool could never, rise to power. He's always just sort of the outsider, able to bring sort of an equilibrium to egos involved in the playtelling. The second story normally involves the king. These tend to be more serious, but at the same time, while the king isn't made fun of, that would be heresy. Normally, there is the king that makes his broad proclamations, and then there are sort of like the lesser characters on the side that they kind of make fun of themselves and the fact that they're quailing and weeping. And the king shows his great power, but at some other point shows his great humility. Things like that. But that's sort of the performance itself. Anna definitely went behind the scenes. The man that she really, I believe it's, whoa, look at that picture. It's great. The man that she really kind of fell for, if you will. I believe his name is Kakal. Oh, jeez, I just looked this up. Yeah, Kakul, Kakul. And it really didn't give a lot of context for like modern history or how it fit. Like it was clearly given that this man was very important and well respected in the Bali community. I couldn't really place him in my own life or in the context of Indonesia because it was very much this, if not insular world, this world of Bali dancing. But during the late 70s and early 80s, and really well before that, because Kakul was well into his elderly age by the time that Anna saw him. He was known not only by award, but also by reputation as the predominant teacher as well as practitioner of Bali dancing. Up to a good page. That's him right there. Now, something about these Bali dancings, I kind of talked about some of the interaction between the characters, but really even more important to that is the symbology of what body posture, not just as your trunk or your whole, but from to the very ends of your fingers and the way your arms are, I'm certainly not going to try it here, but the way that your arms are held in position and everything like that. It's very, very important. So there's really like two main performances. One is a performance, I believe it's like a temple strictly performance. Ooh, here's a very good picture of him. You can see you can see all the different sort of ways that he has to hold his posture that are not the easiest. And you don't want to say he's strict because he would often laugh at himself. The theater has to keep up with modern trends, but at the same time, when it came down to the nuts and bolts of it, Kakul was very strict. Anna actually was one of his students for a number of months, and then actually participated as certainly a lesser member in one of the dance competitions that he did. Now, there were two main dance competitions. One was, or not competition, performances. One was a competition, one was not. The first one was at Temple when he played the king, or the senior member, so kind of the most important play, as I will remember. And actually this is the kind of famous shot from that. You can see you got the temples in the background, you got all of the audience around. It's certainly not a formal setting. It takes place out in the courtyard, not within the temple themselves, and they have kind of a tiered stage, central in the round stage, if you will, that the king performs on. Oh man, these are some really great pictures. You can see how intricate these masks are. Another thing about the masks is the masks are just as important as the body posture is. There's a whole ceremony that goes on with kind of stage by stage inhabiting the mask. And it's not just it goes from one to the other via the ceremony, like dead to alive, but there's actually a series of steps where a number of ceremonies where it's a raw piece of wood. You have to eliminate all the spirits out of the wood that might be angry because you killed the wood, via the tree, obviously. And then it's the piece of wood that it's like dead, it has no meaning. And then you have to sort of like bond with it almost. And then eventually, through 3 or 4 ceremonial steps, it eventually becomes not merely a mask, but the face. I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe representation versus reality in this circumstance, but I don't know, maybe like the thing that comes to mind is maybe like the way Catholics would see the Eucharist, but that's just harebrained, that's off the top of my head. So yeah, the masks are intricately important. You can see, I mean, this is the same picture, but you can see how not, if not frightening, at least emotionally raising that is via that mask right there. Let's see. Oh, there's another good one. Mask right there. So yeah, that's the first competition. It's like a temple, I believe. I forget if it's a harvest ceremony or it's a ceremony, a planting ceremony. I think it might be a planting ceremony. The second one is there's kind of an up and coming teacher that his name, it's like to Tom or something, I believe. I could be completely wrong on that. But he is essentially more the wheeler dealer teacher of this dance in Bali. And while Kakal is known for changing his routine, maybe for students that are a little too strict, this other teacher kind of incorporates much more the modern element of it, but is maybe losing some of the spirit of the original dance. Anyway, there's a competition between the two. It's not really like a fight to the death competition, but it's a competition, a friendly competition, to show off the students of the various schools and see who does better. Well, interestingly enough, this other guy that goes against Kakul actually does not show up to the competition, sort of as like a bow out. I mean, he's not forfeiting, but sort of like a gracious way to say, okay, well, you hold seniority, so I'll step away. And at the same time, Kukal's students really do a superior job of dancing compared to the other students, which I guess is good, but I think it also is, I don't know, it's a competition, but that's not the point of the dancing. The point of the dancing is more the message that it instills upon its audience. Something else that should be mentioned, these dances are very similar to the shadow puppet shows, which are popular not only in Bali, but also in Java, you know, the I guess you call it the most populous main island of Indonesia. And just how what they represent, you know, in an era where there's TVs everywhere, these sort of shadow puppets still exist, not on sort of the grand stage, if you will, though there are times that they are on a grand stage, if you will, like you'll get large audiences and there'll be a formal ceremony, but there's also like shadow puppet shows that just go on nightly that almost like a, you know how you have like a street cart for food? Almost like somebody with a street cart will set up a lantern behind and just do like a little nightly show that people can kind of gather around and, you know, pay small amounts of money to see. And he'll do that nightly, which is really cool. I guess the other part that I thought was really cool did not involve Kakul, but actually involved Ketut. Now, what Ketut was when Anna Daniel, she kind of went blind she knew a lot about dance, but she kind of went blind into Bali. Well, she had been there once before, but she wanted to know more about this dance that she had seen on a previous time, but didn't exactly have all the details worked out. So she went to this guest house where Kakut was. And what was really thrilling about this was there was another competition. Now, this was earlier on, where they did cricket fighting, which I always find insect fighting in Asia, whether it be like, you know, Cambodia or Indonesia or the Philippines or whatever, very interesting. And so these crickets, they're very much maintained as if you would maintain like, well, I mean, dogfighting, I think dogfighting is bad, but dogfighting the way that you would try to, you know, maintain the animal so that he would be in top fighting shape, or even like say like an MMA fighter or something like that. Like you want to make sure that they're in top fighting condition. Well, instead of a big MMA fighter, like a big man, these are little tiny crickets that are like this big, but they have like these special oils that they rub on them, and then they get them kind of agitated with a small specifically designed stick before they fight one another. And then they fight, and it's not to the death, it's to these locusts or crickets kind of grab front, they stand up like this, grab front hind legs, if you will, and the first one to kind of flee is the loser, and the one that kind of stays his ground is the winner. So that was really cool. I don't know if I can really find a picture of that. Oh, here's just a good picture of the Bali countryside. Now, Bali is very lush. Outside of I'm going to describe what Bali is just as a total, and then I think I'll be done just because this is running a little long, but Bali is a very lush, wet rice growing region. So there can be a lot of people live there because you can grow rice fairly abundantly. It's backbreaking labor, but you can grow fairly large amounts of it. at least to support a relatively large population. Now, there's not really like the wealth that you would have in westernized countries. There are the wealthier and less wealthy, but not like extravagant wealth. But also the other thing that sort of this rice thing maintained is it maintained, you know, like you work the land, you get the rice, you do for your family, and that kind of becomes a village. But it's not like you really have a separation between various peoples in terms of, I mean, there's some economic strata by how much land you have, but specifically like city versus urban, or there's just very much a village feel within Bali, an interconnected feel that relies upon one agricultural person relying upon another agricultural person. Now, I'm sure this has changed recently, but when Anna Daniel went there, she said that was definitely felt like that during that time period. Well, I don't know if I exactly described perfectly what the Bali dance is, but I think I gave an impression. You just see like these kind of cool headdresses, and it's really quite a interesting thing. I think I'll leave it at that. Check out the book. It's not very hard to read, and it's got a ton of pictures, and it's super entertaining. All right, Bali, Behind the Mask by Anna Daniel. I know that's backwards, but work it out. All right, see you guys. Bye.